What is up, everybody? Welcome to a special holiday edition of the PlayStation Drive. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Turford. I'm joined, as always, by the man himself, Matt Sowinski. Matt, how are you doing on this lovely, not so white Christmas?
I'm doing well, my friend. It's been a busy holiday season that's only, about to get busier. Lots of things going on, but all good things. Managed to snag both a PS5 for my best friend for his birthday, and I just got a Series X for my brother. So I've been all over it. Shout out to L Babbins for being dope on Twitter. Holiday season is ramping up well. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well as well. I mean, again, my sinuses are killing me because the weather can't make up its mind as to, what it wants to do. But we're ready to talk some video games here. And as I alluded to, this is a very special episode of the PlayStation Drive because it's not going to be a normal episode. We're going to be doing, since, it's the holiday season and there's not a lot of news. I love tier makers. It's something that I love kind of, tier ranking stuff. I love going on YouTube and watching videos about tier ranking stuff. So I thought it would be a fun idea to round out the year with our definitive ranking of the year that it was in PlayStation Plus in 2021. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take all 40 games, yes, 40 games that were actually added in the PlayStation Plus library this year, and we're gonna go through them, talk about what we thought about all of them. Obviously, Matt and I have played a lot of games, but we haven't played every game here. So there's obviously going to be games that we're going to file under the did not play category. For audio listeners who aren't watching on YouTube, here's how it's going to break down. So we're going to each assign the games a letter grade, whether it's like S through F, essentially. And then we're also going to have a did not play thing. And we'll kind of go through that. But essentially, S is like a must play, and then F, of course, avoid. And then we're going to do everything in between that and kind of talk about our thoughts about each one. So I thought this would be fun. So we're going to go through each month, starting with January of this year, where we got 3 different titles, Matt. So we got Manhunter on PlayStation 5. That's where we're going to start. Not Manhunter.
Maneater.
Maneater. Yeah. Doesn't matter. The shark game, where you play the shark PG, essentially, where you play as a shark and you go around. Now, this is only a PlayStation 5 version. They didn't actually give you the PlayStation 4 version of Maneater. It was just the PlayStation 5 version. It was the start of this really weird trend that we saw throughout the year that I'm sure we're going to talk about more. But Matt, did you get a chance to play Maneater at all? Because I did.
I did not play Maneater. I've heard. So here's one kind of point, Ryan, that I want to throw out there before we get going in too deep. If we are confident enough, even if we haven't played a game, are we gonna rank it anyway?
Yeah, I mean, you can if you want. I mean, I'm not gonna tell you no. This is our show. We make up our own rules.
Yeah, we make the rules. I heard good things about Maneater. I don't care enough to rank it, but I just meant that for like future things. But I heard good things. But what about you? You played it? You checked it out? What did you think?
I played it. I thought it was just okay. I mean, I don't think it's anything amazing or anything like that. It's fine. It exists. I know that there are some people that really love it, but I know that there's a lot of people that are kind of in the camp that don't like it either. So I think this is like the truest indicator of a C that I've ever seen on this entire list. So that's where I'm going to actually rank Maneater is a C. So,
all right. I feel comfortable with that.
Also, people are watching the video and they're like, why is Ryan moving 2 things at once? There's latency here, folks, that I'm dealing with. All right.
Yeah.
Next game we got that month was Greedfall. So this is a game that I actually barely know anything about and I did not play. So Matt, did you play Greedfall at all? What do you think?
I feel very passionately about also not knowing anything about Greedfall. Again, I haven't really heard anything about it, nor have I played it. So I'm with you on the did not play. I don't feel strongly about this game either way, or know anything about it to really properly rank it. So I agree on it did not play here.
Yeah, I feel like we can safely file it in under did not play. I think it's, I mean, again, I've heard like middling things about it where it's kind of like Maneater. Some people really like it and some people didn't really love it. So, I mean, that's where we're
Is this almost like a Souls-like, but like in a weird alternate history thing?
I don't think it is, but I don't know.
Who knows anymore?
Someone in the YouTube comments will probably correct us on that. But the last game that we got in January, which is a game that I know a lot about, is Shadow of the Tomb Raider. This was on PlayStation 4, of course, from our friends over at IDOS Montreal, who just put out Guardians of the Galaxy at the time of recording this, of course, which we both love on this show. So Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Matt, I played this a lot. I really liked it, but what do you think about Shadow of the Tomb Raider? Did you play it?
So I did not play Shadow. This was one of the ones that I was actually waiting for PlayStation Plus because I played the original reboot. I played Rise of, was the second one was Rise of the Tomb Raider?
Yeah.
Right? And really, really enjoyed both of those. I think that Rise was just a little bit too long for me. So I was kind of like, I'm going to give myself a break between Shadow, and I was waiting for it to PlayStation Plus, for it to come to PlayStation Plus. And then there was things like moving countries and stuff, and I never went back to it. But I've heard good things. So what about you, Ryan? I'm going to default to you on this one.
Yeah, I know that this is going to be quite a contentious opinion, because I know that there are a lot of people that don't really like this game. But I actually like Shadow of the Tomb Raider a lot. Like, I think that it's one of the stronger Tomb Raider reboot games. I think it's definitely, I prefer it over the first, like the just Tomb Raider, the first reboot. I like Rise of the Tomb Raider more. I think that Rise of the Tomb Raider is my favorite of the three. But Shadow, I really liked it. Not only that, but one of the things I liked about it is, as an old school Tomb Raider fan who's loved the series since the PC days back in 95. One of the things I liked about it was like all of the callbacks in this one, and kind of the setups for other events that happen in those games, in the older Tomb Raider games, especially because this is essentially a prequel to those games, because like the new Tomb Raider trilogy is essentially a prequel series to the older Tomb Raider games, essentially, because it kind of tells the story about how Laura became kind of the character that she becomes in the original Tomb Raider. So I really love the setup that they do with this and kind of where they go with the story. And then the combat's really fun. I like the exploration as well. So yeah, I would actually probably, and again, this is going to probably not agree with a lot of people, but I'm going to throw it up in the A. I think that it's a great choice. And for those that who like the Tomb Raider games, I mean, and you haven't played it at all, I think it's a game you got to play. So I'm going to throw it up there in A, I think.
All right. I agree with an A, and just another one added to the backlog. Ryan, this never ending growing backlog of games.
Yep. Well, speaking of never-ending backlog, Matt, we got our first PlayStation 5 game in February, which was a D&D release, which I'm sure we have things to say about this one. Destruction All-Stars. Let's go. The one game that they were going to sell on launch day for $80, and people did not want to buy it.
They forgot.
They changed the price to $20 very, very quickly for this one. So, Matt, with the cackling, what do you have to say about this one? Where do you rank Destruction All-Stars on this list?
You know what? I really don't think it's a bad game. I spent like a bunch of time with it. And like I enjoy my multiplayer stuff online here and there. And I do think that this game has like a solid base. I do think that there is a good idea here that perhaps just wasn't very content complete when it initially came out. And granted, I've never gone back to it, but I probably spent about 4 or 5 hours with it, and I enjoyed it for what it was. Now, granted, it did have some issues, it did have some problems, but this to me is like, it's fine. It's fine. I'm not upset that we got it. I'm not overjoyed that we got it. For me, this is like a solid, I think this personally for me, this falls back in the C category, where I don't think it's a bad game. I just think its biggest issue is that it's forgettable, which is something when I completely forgot that this game even existed this year. What about you, Ryan? Yeah,
honestly, I agree with you. I think actually, if we were ranking this around when the game came out, I would actually be closer to a D, or not an F per se, because I don't think it's the type of game where you feel guilty for actually redeeming, because it's just like, I don't want this. I don't even want this in my library. But I know that they made improvements to the game since it came out, but it's still not my jam either. So that's why I think it's also probably a C as well. I kind of agree with you on this one, Matt. So I think that's where we're going to put it. We're going to put it as C next to Maneater as well. I think that's a good spot for Destruction All-Stars, because again, you don't hate to have it in your collection. I don't think it's one of those games where you're like, I just want to hide this from my library. But I think it's also not going to blow you away either. So
yeah, I don't see. That's what I mean. Like for me, like once we start getting to D, like those are bad games. I don't think this is a bad game. I just think it's brutally fine. But yeah, I think I'm comfortable with C.
That's quite the term, Matt. All right. Next up, we got Control Ultimate Edition, which was, I think, the first time we got a PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 game kind of in the same ranking. So this one kind of actually bummed me out when it kind of came to Plus, because I had just bought this on PlayStation 5 like 2 weeks before they announced it for Plus, like before it even leaked. So, and you, of course, on PlayStation, you can't return the game at that point. So, which kind of bums me out because it was on sale. So I was like, oh, I'll buy it on sale. It's great. But the sale wasn't like as good as getting it for free, obviously.
Yeah.
So for me, that's not going to play into it, but I actually like Control. I think it's a good game, but I'm not the type of person who would put this up in, S tier or anything like that. I don't think it's like a must play game, but I'm hovering around a B or an A on this one. Probably closer to A, probably where, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is. But Matt, what do you think about this one?
I love Control. I actually played it. I didn't play it with PlayStation Plus. I had played it beforehand, but I really loved it. I think it has a lot of really, really cool ideas. And while it isn't executed flawlessly all the way through, I do think like towards the end of the game specifically, it becomes much more kind of a shooting gallery, and the platforming can be a little bit hit or miss. But I think like the environments and the vibes all around this game are super, super good. I'm very comfortable putting it at an A. Yeah. I think it's a really, really good game. And from what I've heard, the DLC stuff is also really interesting. I haven't gone back to it just as of yet, but I'd be comfortable putting Control in A. I think it's a really, really good game and probably one of the best that we've got this year, to be honest.
Yeah. And I'm glad it was the Ultimate Edition too, because if it wasn't, then I would probably be like fighting for it to go to maybe the B spot probably. Mm-hmm. But because it is the PlayStation 5 version with all the DLC, like, yeah, it's a slam dunk for an A, I think. Not an S probably in either of our books, but close.
Yeah.
Close. All right, next up, Concrete Genie. This was a smaller game that I didn't have a chance to check out at all. So Matt, hit me with it. Did you play Concrete Genie at all?
I did. I actually played and beat Concrete Genie. Concrete Genie was another one of those games that I kept looking at, and I kept almost buying many, many times over because I heard good things. And when it came to Plus, I played it pretty much right away. I think Concrete Genie is a good game. I think it ultimately kind of falls apart in its third act, and like gameplay wise, I think it does a lot in the first two acts that are really interesting, has a bunch of cool ideas, and then it kind of goes against itself in its third act, and it for me it falls apart. But I do think it's beautiful. I think it's really, really cool, and I think it has a lot of good ideas that, like I said, ultimately, and you know me, Ryan, I get stuck on endings sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes it kind of sours the rest of the game for me, and that's just the way that I am. But I'm very I would put Concrete Genie at a B. Because I think it has a lot of cool ideas. I think it does a lot well. I think it's beautiful. I think it ultimately just the end lets itself down, but I think the ride to get there is still entirely worthwhile.
The crazy thing is literally like I was like trying to predict in my head where you would go with this, and listening to your description, I was like, yeah, Matt's probably going to say a B. And sure enough, I was actually not surprised by you saying it was a B.
Yay!
So, yeah, I think that's probably a good spot for that. Next one up, Maquette. Again, this is another game I really don't know anything about, and a game that I didn't play. So I don't really have anything to say about it. Matt, did you play Maquette at all?
Nope. It's a puzzle game. It's entirely built around puzzles, and I don't do that unless I really, really want to. The game looks cool. No hate towards the quality of the game. I have heard good things, but it's just personally a not for me. So I don't know. I think did not play is fair.
Yeah, that's what I would say as well. All right. Next up, a game I know a lot about, of course, because it's an RPG. Final Fantasy VII Remake, of course. Now, this is one of those cases where when it came out, it was only the PlayStation 4 version, even though the PlayStation 5 version was coming. And and they announced, of course, when the PlayStation 5 version was coming, even though it was a free upgrade for people who had bought the game, it was not a free upgrade for anyone who upgraded with Plus. But at the time of this recording, they just announced like 3 days ago that you now can redeem the PlayStation 5 version now if you redeemed it on PlayStation Plus back when it came out back in March. So I personally probably would have put this at the A camp if they didn't do that, because I'd be like, that's the PlayStation 4 version. That's less exciting to me. But I have to argue with, and maybe you're going to argue against me on this one, Matt, but Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think, is S tier for this list. I mean, it's one of the biggest releases on PlayStation Plus this year, combined with the fact that now you get the PlayStation 5 version. Like, I think this one's a slam dunk, but what do you think?
You know what? I agree 100%, dude. This is easy. This is like, for me, when we were looking at this, I was like, this is an easy S. Even like aside of the controversy of its, not being able to upgrade and stuff, I think the game itself is just spectacular. I think that they were able to not only take what a lot of people consider to be a classic and very formative JRPG, turn it on its head and turn its battle system, and then blow it out in such a way that everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people really, really loved it. I think the fact that we got this at all on Plus is a total slam dunk. This one's an easy S for me.
Yeah, I think it's like, again, it's probably like the biggest game on here as well. So yeah, easiest pick I've had to make this whole time. Next up, Remnant from the Ashes, another game that I didn't check out at all. So I actually don't have a lot to say about this one. Matt, did you play this one?
I haven't. I have heard very middling things about it. People seem to either really like it or really not. As I understand, it's kind of like almost like a Soulsborne shooter-esque type. But I like, it seems that there's a lot of people who really like it and a lot of people who really don't, but I haven't played it and I don't know enough about it to comfortably rank it anywhere. Yeah,
same. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't check it out, was just it came to Plus the same month, of course, Final Fantasy VII did, but also it's just like, I'd heard middling things about it, and I'm like, there were so many games this year that were, quality games that I just couldn't find time to check this one out. I redeemed it, so
likewise.
Maybe I'll play it at some point, but it'll go in the did not play category for now. We can't really comfortably rank it. Although this next one, I know at least I played, because I actually played this one back when I used to have PlayStation VR. But it's Farpoint, first-person shooter in VR. It's a game that I actually think is actually a pretty strong game. The only downside, of course, is if you don't like spiders, you're going to be really freaked out by some of the aliens that you fight in this game, because they're like, some of them are like giant spiders and they're coming right at your face. But for the most part, I actually think that Farpoint's actually a pretty good game. Like, this is probably a solid B for me. I think it's a fun shooter in VR. But Matt, what do you have to say about this one?
I agree. I was hunting for Farpoint when it initially came out. And again, like, as people know, I'm a big PSVR fan. So I was trying for a long time to get it, because it was impossible to find when it initially came out, especially because it was bundled in with the new aim controller. I agree, Ryan. I think Farpoint is really solid. I think it's a fantastic showcase for PSVR. I think the only one asterisk I would point is that it's heavily dependent on you having the controller. Yeah. Because I do think having the aim controller really does make a significant difference in your enjoyability of the game. So granted, regardless of controller aside, I think a B is a really fair spot to put it, because while I don't think it's perfect, and there are some stretches of like, all right, I'm in VR, but this is like a lot of talking, which like, I'm just going to stand here. When the action kicks in, it's really interesting and it's a lot of fun. I think B is a great spot for it. Yeah,
I think it's a fun enough game. Plus, I think it's, out of all of the games on this list, I think it's one of the more fun VR games too. So I have to give it at least a little bit of the benefit of the doubt for that one as well. But next up is a series that I infamously do not like. It's a series that I've never really liked any of the games from, and that's Oddworld. So we got Oddworld Soulstorm, which was a remake of the original Oddworld from the PlayStation 1, but done in a completely new engine. And it was PlayStation 5 only. And this one, I think, was also day and date as well, back when it launched in April. So I, of course, didn't play this one because I already know I don't like the Oddworld games. So I didn't bother checking this one out. But Matt, what do you think about this one?
I didn't play it either. I don't generally like games that have this kind of art style, this kind of like awkward grossness to it. And I understand that's by design, but it's just not a world that I want to spend my time in. I've never played any of the Oddworlds. They've just never looked like they were for me. So this was an easy pass for me. It's not one I have any interest in playing personally.
It sounds like we're both on the same page about that. Whereas, because it's mostly just the world itself is like a big turnoff. I think the gameplay is fine, but I don't think it's enough to overcome the stuff that I don't like about the world of Oddworld or the tone of the game. So I think that's where that fits. But Days Gone is a game that we definitely could talk about at least a little bit, because I think we both played it, but I didn't revisit it after launch when it was very buggy and glitchy and not a fun experience. So, I mean, I haven't played it since then. So I would normally not rate it above a C, but I think we can probably argue for it above a C, because I think that, Matt, you probably like this one a little bit more than I did when I first played it, right?
I'm kind of with you, buddy. I picked this one up, and this is like one of the only first party Sony games that, like, I'm just like, I never finished it. I probably spent about like 10 hours or so with it. Motorcycle zombie stuff isn't really inherently my wheelhouse, but again, I wanted to give Ben the benefit of the doubt here. I think this game is for me. I think C is probably appropriate. I could see a case for a B, but personally, it's just not really in my wheelhouse, and I didn't care for the time that I spent with it. So for me, I think it's a C.
Yeah, at this point, this is probably, we're not the two people that are probably going to argue for a B, probably. So
no,
there you go. I know that it's a game that's gotten better with time, but it's just one of those things where like I just haven't really gone back to it, and part of that is just I wasn't really excited to go back to it. Like it was just it was a concept that I think probably was good for some people who like Sons of Anarchy or zombie stuff, but it's fine.
Yeah.
It exists.
The vibe just isn't my thing. I'm just not about it.
All right. Next up, Zombie Army 4. This is the final game from April. Of course, it was like a sniper game where you shot zombies in the head, and that was pretty much what it was. So I think that's fine. Again, this is another one that first of all, I know that there's like a huge audience for this game that kind of has like this cult following behind it. Mm-hmm. But this is another one that's kind of a C for me. But Matt, what do you think? Did you play this one?
Did not play it, so I'll default to you, Ryan. I trust your judgment. I'm comfortable leaving it at a C. I know there's a lot of people who really, really like this game. It does seem to have that kind of strong, passionate fan base, but I feel like just enough people probably haven't played enough of it. I personally haven't checked it out at all, but I trust you on the C.
Yeah, I think it's just the tone. It's a lot of what we talked about with Oddworld. I think it's like the tone of the game, combined with the fact that I don't really love like sniper games to begin with, like Sniper Elite and stuff like that, which is where kind of the series kind of came from. Like it's harder for me to kind of get into a game like this, I think. So that's what I'm going to do that. Next up, we got Wreckfest. It's got cars in it. Everyone knows how I kind of feel about car games from the Xbox Drive, where I like racing games from time to time, but it has to be like a specific style of racing game, and Wreckfest was not that game. So this is the game that my first one where I will maybe say it's probably a D. But Matt, what do you think?
Didn't play it, didn't care. Again, like I'm with you. Like I need a very specific style of racing game for me to get enjoyment out of it. I like, the Need for Speed Undergrounds, the Burnouts, the Forza Horizons. This to me was just like, no, this kind of rally wreck racing is just not really my thing. So I didn't play it at all. But if you think it's a D, I trust you. Let's slap a D on it.
I don't know if anyone in our comments is probably going to argue against that either. So yeah, again, I don't think it's horrible. Again, that's why it's not an F. But it's also not a great game either. So there you go. Next up, Battlefield 5 surprisingly came to the service as well. This is the PlayStation 4 version of the game. This is a game that I liked when it came out, but I don't really like Battlefield's multiplayer. It's something that I've never really got into, but I love the campaigns for Battlefield. Specifically, Battlefield 1 is still one of my favorite shooter campaigns from the PlayStation 4. So I actually really like that game a lot. And to see Battlefield 5 come out, I thought it was good, but not nearly as good as Battlefield 1's campaign. Like it was definitely shorter. And they did some weird stuff with it to where there's a character with like a robot arm and stuff like that, where it's like, it kind of takes you out of the authentic kind of war experience that they tried to do with Battlefield 1. So I didn't like this one as much, but I think it's better than a C. I think this one's probably a B for me. But Matt, what do you think?
See, I'm actually the stark opposite when it comes to Battlefield. I don't play any of the campaigns, but I will spend way too much time in the multiplayer. This is like a series I grew up on. Like I played 1942 for way too long when I was younger. And Battlefield 5, I agree. I think it's fine. I don't think it's one of the stronger ones. I don't think it was as strong as Battlefield 4 or Battlefield 1 was. And I feel like this was kind of the beginning of where the franchise started to slip a little bit. I agree with a B. I think the multiplayer was fun. I think it had a lot of cool ideas. Some of the maps were great, but it didn't have the same staying power that Battlefield 4 or Battlefield 1 had for me. And I think it was solid. I think it was good. So I think a B. I think a B is a good spot for it. And
especially like it's harder to kind of argue for the multiplayer side of things when we just had Battlefield 2042 come out, obviously, like and like how many people are still probably playing Battlefield 5 online, that especially like when it came to Plus too. So I think a lot of the audience had started to move away from it. So that's why like I almost don't qualify the multiplayer as a factor or a big factor when kind of evaluating where to put it on here. That's why I think the campaign alone, I think it's fun and definitely higher than a C, but probably not nearly close to an A. So
yeah. I agree.
Next up, Stranded Deep. This is a smaller game where essentially you're kind of stranded in the ocean. There's sharks. It kind of reminds me of there's this movie called Open Water where it's about these two people that are kind of like stranded in the oceans and they're basically like circled by sharks. It's almost like a found footage film. Like it kind of gave me similar vibes to that, but I never checked this one out and I didn't really hear any good things about it. So I'm probably going to file it under Do Not Play, and I don't think you played it either, right, Matt?
Nope, not my thing. Don't care.
Cool. Did not play. It is. That's where we're going to put it. I mean, it's not an F, and I mean, if I was to go by what people were saying, it's probably a C. But let's move on to Operation Tango. This is a co-op only game. I didn't play this one because I just don't really have anyone around here to play it with. So Matt, I know you checked this one out. So where do you rank this one?
I love this game. I think that it's fantastic. I think it has so many cool ideas. How completely different both sides of the campaign are depending on which character you're playing. It has a lot of really cool ideas. It's one of those games that like really makes you feel successful when you get through a level. It's a ton of fun. I think it's a little short. Like I'm glad that this was a plus experience, and I think it's priced appropriately as well. I just wanted a little more out of it. So I think I would put this at an A just because I think it is really, really solid. It has a lot of really cool ideas, and it's just like, if you have anybody to play it with, and especially because it was one of the PS5 only ones, it kind of got stranded there a little bit. But I think this is a fantastic game. And with stuff like It Takes Two this year, we've had a lot of cool co-op experiences, and I think this one should be celebrated just as much because it has it's really, really cool.
Nice. Yeah. I've heard a lot of good things about it, but I think it's just the requirement of co-op. It has kind of made it inaccessible to someone like me. I know that I'm not the only one out there that's like that either, because not everyone, has, someone else in the house with them, obviously. So it's definitely tougher to get into with that. And if I remember correctly, I don't think there's online co-op for this one either.
So this one only has online co-op, actually. I don't think it has local because you need like the things that each player are seeing are 100% different. I haven't tried local. I don't know if it has local, but this one is only online.
It's probably me. I'm probably mistaken about this. So you're probably correct about this one, Matt. But while you correct me, I have a lot to say about this next one. Star Wars Squadrons from EA. Of course, this was like the return to, Star Wars dogfighting games that we used to see back in the day on the PC with like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, or even stuff like Rogue Squadron on the GameCube. This was a campaign that I actually really liked a lot. The multiplayer is hit or miss. You really have to be in a squad of, with four friends all on voice chat, kind of coordinating with each other in order to have like any, sense of ability to, win at this game or do well. But I think for the single player alone, I think this one's actually like a really solid choice. Like I think this one's an A for me personally. But Matt, did you play it?
So very quickly, Operation Tango is only online co-op. There's no local co-op. But for me, Squadrons is a game, again, it's one of those ones that I kept waiting for it to come to Plus, just because I've heard really good things about, again, the campaign and how well implemented the VR mode is. And it was one that I wanted to check out. I haven't yet, but I've heard nothing but great things. So I think an A is a solid call.
Yeah, I think it's a slam dunk there where it's not like S tier or anything like that. It's not like the cream of the crop, but I also think like it's a lot better than people give it credit for, especially the campaign in particular, which I think was like really, really strong. So definitely check it out if you haven't played it already, if the campaign at least for sure. Next up is a fighting game. I know Matt doesn't play a ton of fighting games, but Virtua Fighter 5 Ultimate Showdown came out and it was a day and date release, but this is basically like a reissue of the PlayStation 3 Virtua Fighter game with some new tweaks and upgrades and stuff like that. I think this is actually a really good port. It's not above a B for me, so that's probably where I'm going to rank this one. I think it's a fun fighting game if you like 3D fighting games. Virtua Fighter, admittedly, is not my favorite 3D fighting franchise. That would go to either like a tie between Dead or Alive or Soul Calibur. Like I prefer those more to Virtua Fighter. But at the same time, I know there's a lot of people that really like Virtua Fighter out there. And I think like if you like Virtua Fighter, like this is like the best version of Virtua Fighter that's currently out there. So Virtua Fighter 5 Ultimate Showdown is a B for me. I think that's where we're going to probably rank this one. And again, Matt, I know you didn't play that, so we'll move on.
Nope.
Next up, a Plaguetale Innocence. Again, this is another one that was PlayStation 5 only, because this actually coincided with the PlayStation 5 release of Plaguetale. So you didn't actually get the PlayStation 4 version with it for whatever reason. And this was also, I think, the month of E3. So this was when they actually wanted to bring a lot of games to the service, that like quality games in particular. And we're going to go through these next three are like some of the bigger games. Like this was definitely one of the bigger months, I think, for PlayStation Plus. But Plaguetale, I thought it was a really good game. But I know it's not for everyone. And it's more of a walking simulator, so you got to be kind of into that thing, got to be in the mood for this type of game. Again, this is another one where I'm hovering between B or A. So Matt, sway me on this. What do you think? Where do you think this one goes?
I haven't played this. I've heard nothing but really, really good things about this. I don't like rats, like very, very much so. And I know that's one of the main focal points of this game is how many rats there are. So I wish I could play this because, again, I've heard fantastic things. I've heard really good things about the story. I've heard great things about how beautiful the game is, even it's kind of in its dark and, dour nature. But I've heard nothing but spectacular stuff, Ryan. So I'm comfortable putting it at either a B or an A. I'll default to you because for me, like I said, I can't do rats, especially that many rats. I don't like rats. This game's about rats. I was going to say,
this is definitely not the game for you then if you do not like rats. It's kind of like what we talked about with Farpoint and spiders. Same deal. So I would say, now here's the thing. I would say the quality of the game is probably an A, but because it's the PlayStation 5 only version, I'm gonna say B on this one.
All right.
I was hovering between B and A, but because it's the PlayStation 5 version only, I will actually say B. Just because, again, I think it like cuts it off from so many people that could have probably enjoyed it anyways, which kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit. But next up is a game that, oh man, it's Call of Duty Black Ops 4. It's the multiplayer only Call of Duty game. And I think this one just came way too late, which is why, like for Plus in particular, especially because, again, there's no campaign. So especially going back to what I talked about with Battlefield, where I don't really rate multiplayer games super high on this list that aren't kind of like within the first year that they came out. Because by the time this came to Plus, this was like out for 2 years essentially. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how many people are still really playing Black Ops 4 when we've got, Modern Warfare, and we've got, Black Ops Cold War, and now the newest entry in Call of Duty series. So Vanguard. So I would say at this point, this is probably closer to a C or a D for me. But Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I haven't played this. I really liked Blops 1 and 2. I kind of moved away from COD. Battlefield has always been my thing, but I always tried to play COD. And for the last few years, I feel like what I'm seeing just hasn't clicked. And as I understand, this one was, again, kind of middle of the pack. It wasn't anything too spectacular. No, and again, I agree with you, Ryan. I think this came way too late. I'm comfortable putting it at a D just because I feel like it's multiplayer only. And I feel like the environment that you're joining in is so important. And B, once you start playing a game like this long after launch, everybody knows what they're doing. And all you're going to do is get slapped around endlessly. And especially when COD, when time to death is so short. Mm-hmm. I think D is fine. Yeah.
Like it'd be different if this game was, Modern Warfare or Black Ops Cold War, because at least you had the campaign to play with it. But because it was just multiplayer only, 2 years after the game's out in a series that comes out every year with new multiplayer games, I think this one's harder to justify in the camp. So we'll rank it as D. I think that's probably where I would put it, where it's like, you could redeem this one, but I don't know how many people you're going to really have to play with it or how fun of an experience you're going to have with it. So next up, WWE 2K Battlegrounds. This was a game that I have to chuckle at because it was another in the long line of 2K games, wrestling games that were just full of bugs and issues. So I would say it was already a game that had mixed reviews when it came out. I did play it a little bit. I thought it was fine. This is another one that's probably a C for me. Matt, I don't think you probably played this one either, right?
No, I don't care for wrestling personally, so I was not something I checked out.
I mean, I don't like wrestling either, but I think wrestling video games are fun. So that's why I'll usually play wrestling video games from time to time. But this one just didn't really win me over. It kind of they were trying to go for kind of the N64 wrestling vibes, like the old WWF games. But they just weren't at the same level of polish as those games were. So that's why I think this one's probably a C. I know if we were ranking it probably closer to when it came out, it would probably be closer to a D because of all the bugs and issues. But I think a lot of them have kind of been ironed out by now. So yeah, it's probably a C. Next up, Matt's favorite game in the whole wide world, Hunters Arena Legends. Matt, I infamously did not play this game because I left it to you because you told me all about it and it made me not want to redeem it. So tell me where should I put this one on this list?
All right, Ryan, we have our second S tier game here. No, this game sucks. This game sucks. I really tried to go in with an open mind from like seeing it at the different state of plays and the different places that we saw it. It already looked rough. I really genuinely tried. I think I sunk like 2 or 3 hours into this game. So it's not like I played one game and then, left it alone. Just not fun. The time to kill is all over the place. The maps are too large. You get lost so easily. It's just, there isn't a lot that redeems it. And I truly did not have even a couple minutes of fun doing this. This is for me, I think, is our first F game. Yeah. Just because I don't think there's anything there. And I don't think I've heard anybody talk about it. I don't think there's anything worth saving here. I would slap this into the F and leave it there.
That's where it's going. Our very first F rank. I mean, to be fair, we joked about this a little bit when I told Matt about the idea for this episode. I'm like, yeah, this one's probably going straight to F. It'll probably be the first one we put there because, I mean, this is the type of game where like you redeem it on PlayStation Plus, you try it once and you're like, I'm going to hide this from my library. I don't even need to know that I have it. So there you go. But then a game that has multiplayer that I'm actually more high on, Plants vs. Zombies Battle for Neighborville. So this was a game that I actually played for the very first time when it was in alpha, back when I was actually a tester for it. And it's a game that I actually think is pretty fun, combined with the fact that it's a family-friendly multiplayer shooter that isn't Fortnite. And I think whenever you have a game that kind of fits that bill, like especially because I've heard a lot of parents talk about the Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare games before, being like really good for their kids and them like really enjoying both playing it with their kids and then watching their kids play it. And this one was no different. I think it's actually really fun. If you've got kids or, younger people in your household and you want to get them into shooters, like I think this is actually a good place to start. So I'm actually going to go ahead and probably say this is probably B rank, whereas I don't think you play this one, right, Matt?
No, I tried to get into Garden Warfare back. I think we got the first one on PlayStation Plus back on PS4. And while I appreciate it for what it is, it's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, makes sense. So that's why I think it's like it fits like a really good demographic for games, and I'm glad to see that it's actually here. So got to throw that in there. Cool. Next up, Tennis World Tour 2. This one was a disappointment. It was not a very good tennis game. I mean, tennis games I think are really fun because it's just like wrestling, where I don't really like watching wrestling in real life or following wrestling. But I always think wrestling games are fun, and tennis kind of fits that bill for me too, where I think tennis games are actually really fun when done well. And this was not one that was done well. Like this is definitely a D rank for me. Matt, I don't think you play this one either, right?
Listen, after the heights of Tennis World Tour 1, there was a lot that they had to do wrong. No, I haven't played this. I have no opinion about it. Let's throw it to D.
Perfect. Next up, Overcooked All You Can Eat Edition. This was the PlayStation 5 release of Overcooked. This is a game that I haven't played for the same reasons that I talked about with Operation Tango, because I don't really have anyone else to play these types of games with. So, Matt, I can already tell you're excited about this one. Tell me where it ranks on your list.
I love Overcooked. And the fact that the All You Can Eat edition bundles in the first game with the second game with, quality of life enhancements across the two, bringing in a bunch of the DLC that they added on top of like new characters and everything. How accessible this game is while also being ridiculously difficult once you start getting into it. How I love Overcooked, and I genuinely think this is an S tier in terms of its accessibility, in terms of, being able to play no matter who you are. We had friends who never play video games playing with us. We had my partner became obsessed with it. And I genuinely think that given that this is the collection that gives you everything that came before, wrapped up in with a nice little bow, I genuinely think this is an S tier. I think that this game has no flaws. I think it's fantastic. And I think it's just a fantastic party game and just really, really good.
The only flaw is that you'll want to murder the person that you're with probably by the end of it. That's the only flaw.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Mario Party Mario Kart effect, and which I think this game nails super well because it's just a lot of fun. It's really good.
Nice. All right, next up we got Hitman 2. The Hitman series is a series that I've never been super into because I don't really love, again, kind of the tone of these games, and I appreciate and applaud the work that I always doing with these games, because I do think that they're these recent Hitman games, like with Hitman 1, 2, and 3, of course, this year. I think that they're high quality games, but I'm just not super into them. Even though I like stealth games, This is just not one that I've ever been into. But at the same time, I'm willing to recognize the excellence of it and probably throw it in the A ranks. Even though I personally wasn't super into it, I know a lot of people that really were, and I can recognize that it's a quality experience that's worth your time. So Matt, what do you think about this one? Did you play Hitman 2?
Yes, I did. I never finished it just because other things came out. I really, really love Hitman. I've used to play them all the time. Blood Money and especially Hitman 2 and Hitman 3 were fantastic. I think especially everything that's been going on with these latest run of Hitman games is really, really cool. The fact that they are able to hold on to the license after being separated from Square Enix, I believe it was, and be able to bring this game back. And especially retroactively, everything that they've done with 1, 2, and then 3, making them accessible, and bringing a lot of quality of life improvements and making it possible to play in VR. I think Hitman 2 really changed the game for me as well because I was an idiot, Ryan. I'm very particular when it comes to Hitman games. Like I need to do things as well as I can. And I kept restarting the level every time I made a mistake. And then a co-host of mine on Burnout, Darren, was like, you realize you can save mid-level, and that changed everything even more for me because then I could experiment and play with them. I think these games are excellent. I think an A is very, very fair. I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah, because I think what separates it from being an S tier is it's just not for everyone, where it's not everyone. Yeah. Like I know, again, even I'm not the only one with the opinion that I have about the Hitman games. So that's what holds it back at least a little bit. And then last up for this month, which again, I think was like a really solid month for PlayStation Plus, Predator Hunting Grounds. This of course was made by the company that made the Friday the 13th games, but they made a Predator game where one person plays the Predator and you have a bunch of soldiers hunting the Predator down one. But this one was also a game that was kind of plagued with bugs at launch. Combined with the fact that there was only really one map to play on, like you didn't have a lot of variety in the game. It's a game that I have a soft spot for because I love Predator, and I like this style of game. So I'm probably willing to put this in the B camp because I do think it's gotten better. There's been more content added to the game for free, and I think it's a pretty solid game. But Matt, what do you think?
See, I'm in between a B and a C on this one. I played a bunch of this with some friends, and I think it was really good for having those ridiculous laugh out loud moments of when something goes wrong, and then everybody's having a great time with it. I do think it's still buggy. I do think that it's still a little content light. And I do think that controlling it, especially the Predator at points, is a little wonky. I appreciate what they went for, and I do think that it has its charm in its kind of jank. Yeah. But I don't I'm in between a B and a C. But if you put it at B, I'll go with you. We can throw it in a B, just because I think that there is something cool here, and I think it does have some of those great moments. But I feel like sometimes the areas in between those great moments are a little too far and few between. So I'm comfortable at a B. But I also wouldn't mind it at C. I'm in between the two. But like I said, you put it at B, we'll put it at B.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where it goes. Again, if you like multiplayer games that are fun and kind of janky, I think you're gonna really dig this one. All right. Next one. I can't actually read because of the way the tier maker works. So Matt, can you read this one off for me?
Hell Let Loose.
Hell Let Loose. Matt, I didn't play this one, but I know you did. Where do you think this ranks?
I hate this stupid game. And here's where I'm very conflicted, Ryan, because I played an hour and a half of this when it came out, because again, big open multiplayer shooters. It gave me a bit of Battlefield vibes. I was like, let's jump in. So my friend and I jumped into this, and we spent probably about an hour to an hour and a half playing it seriously before we just started shooting and killing each other whenever we could find each other. And then it took, I did a lot of research after, and everybody says it takes 10 hours of learning the game before you can properly enjoy it, because it is very simulator heavy. There's a lot going on in this game. I just don't think it's very fun. You can spend literal minutes running across the map to get shot out of nowhere, and then you respawn takes a while, and then once again, you're stuck running. We had a hard time finding each other. We were all over the place. I don't think it's entirely implemented well, but I also understand that it is not for me. Personally, I would put this at a D. Yeah. But again, I'm conflicted because I can understand the appeal. I understand why somebody would like to, similarly to you and Hitman, I can understand why someone would. I just think that the subsect of people who would genuinely enjoy this for what it is small, and there's a big learning curve with it. So for me, I would put it at a D, just because I don't think it's bad enough to be an F, but I can't make a stronger argument for it than putting it higher than that, even understanding that its appeal. Yeah. I don't like it.
Yeah. That's where we're gonna throw it. I'm actually kind of surprised you didn't go with F1 this one, but I'm glad that we're staying away from that tier as much as possible.
Again, like
you're not ashamed to have this one.
Exactly. And again, like I can appreciate why someone would like it. I just don't know how many people you find that would appreciate it, if that makes sense. Like it's just not for me by a very long stretch.
For sure. Well, next up, another game that it's probably not for Matt, but it's a game for me because I love fighting games. Mortal Kombat 10. Of course, it's weird that, it's Mortal Kombat 10, whereas Mortal Kombat 11 has been out forever at this point. But Mortal Kombat 10 in particular has been out for years and years and years. I think it's actually a really fun game, but I think like most of the audience probably already had picked it up at this point. But I think it's still a really solid game if you go back to it. I think most people have already moved on to MK11 who would even be interested in this one. That's why like I can't rank it higher than a B probably is where I would put this one because I think it's a quality game. It's just, I think the time is kind of past for people to want to jump into this one in particular, especially because it's weird because the campaign for it is kind of like the story of it. It's in the middle of two games, like one that was on PlayStation 3 with the reboot of Mortal Kombat and then Mortal Kombat 11's story. Like it's kind of in the middle between those two games. So it doesn't make a lot of sense if you didn't play, for example, the first Mortal Kombat game on PlayStation 3, or it's on backwards compatible now on Xbox One, which is nice. But yeah, that's why I think it's probably a B. It's not amazing, but I think it's definitely much higher than a C, I think, as far as fighting games are concerned.
I actually played a bunch of this one. I actually do like Mortal Kombat is one of the few franchises that I'll actually mess around with. And I do think it's again, I think a B is a very fair spot for it. Also because I find it really strange that we didn't get the XL version.
Yeah.
Especially like it's an old game that we had a definitive edition of essentially already. And like you said, Mortal Kombat 11 had been out as well. So like, I feel like it's just really strange that we got this one. And I do think mechanically it's a lot of fun. I think it's really solid. I think B is fair. I would even consider a C just because again, I don't know why we didn't get the XL if they were giving us this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of like, why this one? The
hilarious thing about this too, Matt, is that I don't know if you knew this, but this game's in the PlayStation Plus collection for PlayStation 5. So it's like, and it's this version. It's not even the XL version in that either. So it's like, I don't understand. In fact, you know what? You won me over with the argument, Matt. I'm putting it in C.
Again,
it's solid.
Not to speak to the game's quality. It's just that like there's so much weirdness around this as to why we didn't get the better version. And like you said, I completely forgot it was part of the Plus collection.
Yeah, it's very much a time and place thing. Where again, it's one of those things where we would have ranked it higher. Like Black Ops 4, for example, we would have ranked it higher when it came out, but we have to look at it from the lens of where we are in 2021 when we're receiving the game, I think. But last one that we got this month, which is a game that I played a lot of on Xbox One, and that is PGA Tour 2K21. This is the newest golf game from 2K, where you can actually create your own courses. I think this game is really fun. We used to do a lot of like a weekly tournament on UKP over on Xbox with this, run by, of course, Donnie Reese over at PSVG. And I had a ton of fun playing this game. I think it's a really good golf game. So if you're into golf games, I think it's actually a really solid entry. I mean, it's got some flaws, but I think it's actually a pretty good game, especially if you play it on PlayStation 5, because the one knock against it I had with it on Xbox One is the load times. The load times take forever for this game. But if you're playing on PlayStation 5, it's like almost instant. So yeah, this is a game that I would actually probably say for golf fans, this is probably like an A-rank game, I think.
Cool. I'll take your word for it. I haven't played it, but I appreciate it for what it is. So cool. I'll run with you. A it is.
If you like golf, it's perfect. And then next up, First Class Trouble. This one was also a day and date release. I didn't check this one out at all, Matt. Did you have a chance to try this one?
I haven't yet. This is definitely one that I want to. It's one of the ones that like I'm just waiting for the day that like my friends and I are all available, just because things have been super busy for the last little while. It's one that I have every intention of playing, just because from what I understand, it is fun for the first little while as you learn it and everything, but then it hits a certain point where it gets a little too obvious for where things are going. So I'm comfortable throwing this into did not play just because I've heard it's solid, but I want to get my hands on it before I can actually definitively say anything about it.
For sure. All right, next up is kind of an odd choice because it's Knockout City, which I think is a fantastic game. I think it's a really fun multiplayer game if you've got a group of friends together. I think this is a super fun game, and it was a game that I wasn't super excited about because it kind of looked like Fortnite, but with volleyball. Like it has kind of that look to it. But getting into the game and playing it, I think it's really solid. But the free trial for this game is so good that I almost feel like you're better off just subscribing. If you didn't redeem it in October when this came to PlayStation Plus, you're better off just subscribing to EA Play for a month and then kind of getting the free trial and playing that and just unsubscribing from there and never playing it again, probably. So this is why this one's probably a B for me. But Matt, did you play this one at all? I don't know if we talked about this.
Yeah, I love Knockout City. I think I had similarly, Ryan, I had the exact same feeling as you did going into it. I was kind of like, this doesn't look like it's going to be that great. And I was instantly swept up in its charms. I do agree with you. I think the free trial is super strong, but it does cap you out, I think, like rank 20 or rank 25. And then you're kind of, locked out from playing. I would actually argue that this is an A.
Okay.
Just because I do think it's a lot of fun. I do think that they've been supporting it a lot since its launch, and there's a lot more that, there's more maps now. They're doing a lot of interesting stuff with its modes. Granted, I haven't played it in a couple months, but I do think that mechanically it's a lot of fun. And I think this is one of those ones that surprised a lot of people. And this is one that, like, again, now that I have it with PlayStation Plus, it's like a Rocket League one for me, where I know I'll keep coming back to it over the years because I do think it's a lot of fun. I would say this is an A personally.
Yeah. I will actually give it to you on that one. We'll put it in an A because I think like it's also a game that I really enjoyed. It's probably my favorite sports game of the year, in all honesty. So to get that for free, I think is a pretty solid choice. It's one of those games where like I could maybe argue it came a little too late, but I think it's great. But next one is another game I'm quite familiar with, Kingdoms of Amulor Re-Reckoning. This is the port of the PlayStation 3 Kingdoms of Amulor Reckoning, but with some new content added to it, because they also did like a new DLC expansion for this, which is kind of a crazy thing to actually see a new piece of DLC coming to, an old game, like a re-release of a game essentially. But I don't know if this port is super solid. Like I think the game itself, it was really fun on PlayStation 3. Like this was one of my favorite action RPGs on that console. But I don't think it's aged super well, which is why I'm actually probably hovering around a C on this one, I think is probably where I would put it. But Matt, what do you think?
I'll default to you. This is another one that like I have it downloaded and I just haven't started it yet just because, life happens. But this is one I've been really curious about for a long time. I know it has like a massive like cult following. There's a lot of people who really, really love this game. I haven't heard enough about the port to kind of, argue one way or the other. So I'll default to you. I think C is fair. And this is one that I will definitely be checking out.
Nice. All right. These next three, Matt, I'm going to probably be putting in your court. I don't know if you've played any of them. The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners. These are all VR games, by the way, which is why I'm putting these mostly on Matt. Did you get a chance to check this one out?
Yes, I did play Saints and Sinners. I played a bunch of it. I've spent like 3 or 4 hours with the game so far. It's fantastic. I think this is an easy A. I think it controls well. Even for me, who I'm like quite susceptible to motion sickness, the comfort levels that they have never made me feel sick. Just kind of skulking around and sneaking and actually like stabbing a zombie in the head and having to like rip the knife back out. Like the atmosphere is fantastic. I think the combat's super solid. It has like from some of the side quests and stuff that I've seen so far, it's actually really well written. And like this is another one that I've heard nothing but glowing things about. So I was about to buy it, and then when we got it announced for PlayStation Plus, I was like, hell yeah, because this is one that I've been interested in for a long time. I think this is an A. I think this is really good.
Yeah, nice. And the next up, The Persistence. Did you check this one out?
I haven't played this one yet. I've heard good things. I know that this one you can actually play in 2D as well. You don't have to be wearing the PSVR. But I'm going to throw this into did not play just because I know it's like a horror-esque type thing, and generally I stay away from those experiences. I am going to try it. I just haven't had time to do it yet. So for me, this is a did not play. Nice.
Same. And last one, Until You Fall. What do you think?
So this one I have played a bunch of, and I think this is really solid. It's not perfect. Graphically, it's just okay. The environments are fine. It's a roguelike, so it's heavily dependent on you kind of, finding the kind of build that you like to be able to continue on through. But I think it's really solid. I think it's a good time. For me, this is a B. Just again, because it gives you that Infinity Blade-esque feel where you have to like really like position things in the right order and get the attacks in. It's not perfect, but I think it's really fun. I think this is a B.
Nice. And then last three, of course, our December drops that we talked about not too long ago. First up, Godfall Challenger Edition S rank. This is this is you don't even want this in your library, I think. Matt, do you agree?
You know what, Ryan? I 100% agree that this is an F. I actually have stayed true to my word. I have not even claimed it, and I'm not going to. I don't forget even hiding it from my library. This is one that I'm just like, I went in and I claimed Mortal Shell, and I claimed DC supervillains, and I looked at Godfall and I was like, you know what? Forget you. I'm not even going to claim it. I just think that this is such a crappy way to handle a PlayStation Plus game, and to make it like the main line, the kind of, the definitive Plus game that we have for this month, to basically give you an end game that you can't even enjoy properly. Yeah. And then they friggin' discount the single player as in like, wink, wink, nod, nod. You want to buy it, right? You want to be able to experience this properly, right? I think this is just scummy. I think it sucks. And again, I'm not even claiming this one just because I don't want to support anything about this. If there was something less than an F, but that wasn't a did not play, I would actually slap this even lower if I possibly could, just because I think it's gross.
I think F is already like, I specifically omitted the E rank because I already knew anything we were going to put in F was like, don't even bother claiming this one.
See, like this actually retroactively wants me to move Hunter's Arena Legends into D just so that Godfall can sit in F by itself. But again, I just not even because of Hunter's Arena quality, just because of how stupid Godfall is in this situation.
So
but
I should have left the E rank in, I'm guessing. They could have had their own ranks essentially of bad.
They deserves it. Anyways.
Yeah, I straight up agree with you. And if you want to hear our full thoughts about that, we talked about it a lot when they announced this game was coming to Plus, I think on last week's show. So go back and listen to that. And then next up, we talked about this before. I don't think either of us played Mortal Shell, right? Like you didn't go back to it since then? Cool.
Nope.
And then last one, did you play Lego DC Supervillains, Matt?
Not yet. I haven't. I actually downloaded it. It's on the docket to play over the holidays with my partner because, again, we like to jump into these kinds of games together sometimes. So I don't have feelings about it yet, but I understand that it is, from what I heard, it's actually really solid. But well, I don't know, Ryan, if you have
I'm going to back you up with that
feelings.
because I played it since the last time we talked about it. And I think it's fun. It's another Lego game. If you like Lego games and you like DC games, like you're going to like this one. This is a solid B for me, I think.
Cool.
Because I think it actually kind of fits in there. It's also notable because it's the very last of the traditional style Lego games that we'll ever get because they're changing up the series with their next release, which is interesting.
Nice.
All right. So there we go. There is our official rankings. If you're watching on YouTube, you can look over there and you can see our official rankings and you can debate with us in the comments if you want. But I thought this was really fun. Overall, Matt, before we go, do you think that this was a good year for PlayStation Plus?
I think it was really solid. You know what? Like when we started this, Ryan, I was kind of like, man, like we're not going to have too many in the B, A, and S categories. I'm pleasantly surprised with how many we do. And again, I think some of them did end up in C and D was more because it was either not for us or because of the timing that we got. But I think this was actually a really, really solid year. And I do think that there was at least something for everyone. I think we got like a good spread of games. And I really do think that there was something here for just anyone. And I'm glad that we got as much as we did.
Yeah, same here. I think that I was not expecting, the majority of the games being a B rank or above, but the fact that, just looking at this list, I think it's a pretty solid year, which again, just it makes me want to go back and play some of the games we kind of missed and kind of see where they kind of, fall on here. But it's been a long show already, Matt. We got to go. But before we go, Matt, plugs go.
Yeah, you can find me over at youtube.com/burnoutbrighter, or you can find me over on Twitter at burnout_Matt.
Very nice, my friend. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You can find us on Twitter at Yumi Capri's, on YouTube at youtube.com/Yumi Capri, and on podcast services around the globe. So, of course, we want to say happy holidays to everyone out there who listens to the PlayStation Drive this year. I mean, it's been an amazing year of the show. We're obviously not going to be doing a show next week because next week will be the Yumi and Capri's, which is our Game of the Year show, which will appear on this podcast feed on the 31st. So, actually, your normal day for the PlayStation Drive is when you'll actually be getting this episode of our Game of the Year showcase with Matt, myself, Console Kato, Sean Capri, and Garrett Bland. So look out for that next week, and then we'll be back in the new year. It'll be 2022 when we return again to this show. So thanks again to everyone for listening to the show throughout the years. So for Matt Sawinski, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been the PlayStation Drive, and we're out. The PlayStation Drive is fueled by patrons over at patreon.com/YumiCapri. And I want to say thank you to each and every one of our patrons from the bottom of my heart from your support across all of our content. And let's start by thanking our premium producers, Dallas Ford, Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team, and Jonathan Brown over at youtube.com/PM Entertainment. Our platinum producers, Robbie Ballaby Miller and Trucker Sloth. And our gold members, Argo, Brendan Myers, Dallas Robbins, Emily O'Kelly, Heather Boney, James Johnson, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Benji Kong, Marcus O'Neill, RJ Kern, Dano, Skinny Matt, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, Fulia Fuji, and Xavier Reyes. Thank you all for all of your support.